She was screaming. I ran out and found her crumpled on the front steps, clutching her shoulder, dislocated, maybe broken. 3 HOA enforcers stood over her, one with a clipboard, one filming her pain like it was protocol. The man who pushed her? Travis, smug, entitled, saying she was obstructing a compliance inspection. That's the moment everything inside me snapped. Not with rage, with precision. You don't shove a nurse. You don't shove my wife. Especially when her hands were still covered in herbs from the garden she grew to help cancer patients. That shove set off a chain reaction that would take down the entire HOA leadership, destroy careers, and land 3 people in handcuffs. And it all started because I built her a trellis for our anniversary. But before we dive into this wild story of power, corruption, and revenge, take a second to hit the like button. It helps more than you know. And if you're not already subscribed, do it now. We share real stories like this every single day. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Ever dealt with a petty HOA dictator or a power-tripping Karen? We want to hear it. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. After 26 years in the Navy, I thought I knew what peace looked like. Turns out I had no idea. Lena and I moved to Willow Ridge for quiet. Not just silence but real peace, the kind that seeps into your bones. We'd done our time, deployments, base housing, missed holidays, night terrors, all of it. Lena had held me through the darkest moments, when I couldn't sleep, couldn't speak, couldn't be touched. She deserved a garden. I deserved a shed. We thought Willow Ridge was the perfect place to start over. It looked peaceful enough. Tree-lined streets, lake nearby, decent-sized yards, neighbors who smiled but didn't pry. The house wasn't fancy but it felt right. The backyard had a little slope Lena loved, perfect for herbs and flowers. She was a nurse at the local hospital. Made her own teas and tinctures. Her little way of helping people feel seen. And me? I started building again. Woodwork. The kind of thing that calms a veteran's mind. A rhythm. A plan. I even started teaching free self-defense classes to local teens on Saturdays. People smiled more when they passed our house. I started breathing easier. For our anniversary, I built her a trellis. Curved wood, clean lines, stained by hand. Strong but beautiful. She cried when she saw it. Said it reminded her of our first home. That night, we danced in the yard under string lights. We thought we'd finally made it. 3 days later, the knock came. Travis Whitaker. Tight polo. Sunglasses. Clipboard. Zero empathy. This structure, he said, tapping the trellis with his pen, violates HOA Regulation 34C. No architectural modifications without prior written approval. $500 fine. Remove it within 48 hours. Then he slapped a paper into my hand and walked off like he'd served justice. I tried to keep calm. I'd survived firefights and bombings. Surely I could handle a guy with gelled hair and a clipboard. I figured it was a mistake. A warning. So I did what a reasonable man does. I filed an appeal. That was my first mistake. Because this wasn't about a rule. It was about control. 3 days later, a new letter arrived. Not just a rejection. 5 more violations. Mailbox color not approved. Lawn height 3.6 inches, limit is 3. Trash bins in sight, they weren't. Unauthorized vegetation, Lena's herbs. Nuisance activity, my self-defense classes. Total fines, $2,175. We'd been marked. Lena sat down on the porch steps and read each line. Quietly. Carefully. Her fingers trembled. This is targeted, she whispered. This isn't about grass. No, I said. It's about power. Our neighbors Paul and Jenna leaned over the fence that evening. Paul was a retired cop, calm guy, always polite. You stirred the nest, he said. Karen Matthews runs this place. Travis is her enforcer. They don't like anyone who doesn't follow the script. 3 families moved out last year after stuff like this. Moved out? Or got forced out, Jenna added, her voice tight. I requested a formal meeting with the board. I brought photos of other structures, including a pergola in Karen's own yard. I even flagged line items in the HOA's public budget, like $11,200 to consulting landscaping paid to a company with no website and no phone number. We met at the clubhouse, granite counters, plush chairs, scented candles burning like it was a spa. Karen sat in the middle. Pearl earrings, fake smile, eyes like knives. Doug Callahan sat to her right, thin, twitchy treasurer. Travis stood behind them, arms crossed. Karen spoke like I was a child who had misbehaved. Mr. Hastings, she said, we understand you're new to community living, but our rules exist for a reason. Everyone else follows them just fine. I calmly placed my folder on the table. Photos of unapproved structures. Receipts. Notes. Karen didn't even blink. Doug looked nervous. Karen leaned forward and said, "We're not here to discuss finances. Either comply or we escalate." And that's when I knew. This wasn't a neighborhood. This was a regime. I told Lena later that night, "I've done this before. Different battlefield. Same game." She looked tired. But she nodded. "We're not leaving," she said. "This is our home." I kissed her forehead and turned off the porch light. Because I knew, this war was just beginning. We tried to stay calm. We really did. For a few days, Lena and I kept our heads down. We trimmed the lawn, moved the trash bins, filled out a request form for the trellis, even though it felt ridiculous. I figured maybe, just maybe, they'd back off. But instead, they doubled down. Within a week, we got 3 more violation notices. One said the rosemary in Lena's garden was unapproved landscaping. Another said we were operating an unauthorized youth program, meaning my self-defense classes. The third? Vehicle aesthetics not compliant. That was about my truck. A perfectly clean parked truck. Apparently, it didn't match the visual character of the street. Travis started circling our house like a vulture. He parked across the street every morning watching with binoculars. Sometimes he'd pretend to talk on his phone while snapping pictures of our front yard. Once, I saw him standing on our driveway line, measuring the edge of the grass with a ruler. I told Lena not to worry. But she wasn't worried. She was angry. "They're trying to scare us into moving," she said. "They've done this before. But I'm not leaving. And neither are you." "Copy that," I said. And I meant it. But I also knew fear when I saw it. Not in Lena, in Travis. He was the kind of man who'd never served, never sacrificed, never built anything real. But give him a clipboard and a little authority, and suddenly he thinks he's in charge. I'd seen his type before. They crumble under pressure, but only if you push the right way. Still, I wanted to give them one more chance to back off. So I scheduled another appeal, this time in writing. The next day, a citation appeared on our door: non-cooperative conduct. No fine, just a warning. The message was clear: shut up and obey. Then it happened. The moment everything snapped. It was a Thursday. Lena had just finished a 12-hour ER shift. She looked exhausted, but she said she wanted to water the garden before bed, said the lavender needed it. I was in the garage sanding down a shelf. I heard voices. Loud. Then I heard her cry out. I ran. She was on the porch steps, crumpled on one side, holding her shoulder with her other arm. Her face was pale, twisted in pain. 3 people stood over her. Travis. A younger guy holding a phone, filming. And a woman with a badge clipped to her belt that said, "Property Compliance." "She refused access to the yard," Travis said flatly. "That's a violation of Section 12. Lena tried to speak but winced. I crouched down, checked her shoulder. Dislocated. Possibly a tear. I stood slowly. "You pushed her?" I asked. "I didn't touch her," he said. "She fell while resisting inspection." I looked at the camera. "Still rolling?" "Of course," the young guy said. "Good. Evidence." Paul and Jenna ran over from across the street. Rebecca, Jenna's sister, started filming with her phone. "She needs a hospital," I said. "Now." "Call the police," Rebecca whispered. Paul stepped forward, phone already in hand. "On it." The cops showed up 20 minutes later. Officer James Benson. Badge tilted, sunglasses on, chewing gum. He barely looked at Lena. "She probably tripped," he said. "Not much to do here." "You're not going to file a report?" I asked. "She doesn't seem eager to press charges. She can't lift her arm." "Well, accidents happen." That's when I knew he was in on it. The HOA wasn't just aggressive, it was protected. At the hospital, they confirmed it. Her shoulder was dislocated. No surgery, but she'd need rest and therapy. As they set the joint, she gritted her teeth and whispered, "This isn't over." And it wasn't. That night I didn't sleep. I just planned. Back in the Navy, we called it battle mapping. You take the terrain. You locate weak points. You build pressure until the enemy folds. I called Paul the next morning. He met me in his garage and handed over a folder he said he'd been adding to for years. Inside, past citations, meeting transcripts, photos, financial records. "Karen's husband died 3 years ago," Paul said. "Carbon monoxide. Garage door left down." Looked suspicious, but Benson closed the file in a day. "She inherited everything," Rebecca added. "Suddenly started driving a Lexus. Vacationed in Maui. HOA board approved all her reimbursements. And Doug. I asked. Hired as treasurer a week after being fired from First Keystone Bank. Embezzlement charges vanished. Travis. Domestic violence charge. Sealed record. Disappeared after Karen hired him. I was stunned. But also, I was activated. This was war. Lena, arm in a sling, sat with me that night. You're not going to fight them, are you? She asked. I am, I said. But not with fists. With facts. And what if they push back harder? I smiled. Then they've already lost. I called Sam Mendoza the next morning. Army vet. Now a lawyer. Lena once saved his life after a motorcycle crash. 36 hours straight in the ER. He showed up that night, took one look at the paperwork and said, they're screwed. Why? They've violated at least 6 state codes. Transparency, selective enforcement, misuse of funds. But doesn't that take years to prove? Sam shrugged. Not if you hit all the right pressure points at once. We made a plan. I filed 12 separate information requests under the HOA's disclosure policy. Sam submitted a formal notice of dispute to the board. Rebecca started digging into Karen's financial trail. Paul helped install cameras around our property, every angle, 24/7. Travis came back 2 days later holding another citation, unpermitted security devices. He reached for the camera. I didn't stop him, because it was already streaming to the cloud. And Sam was watching live. That night, Sam said, we escalate tomorrow. How? Publicly. We're not ready for a fight. You're already in one, he said. Might as well hit first. The day after we set up the security cameras, I got an idea. In SEAL training, they teach you not just to fight, but to observe, adapt, and shift the battlefield. And in this fight, the battlefield was public opinion. So when the next HOA meeting rolled around, I showed up early. Not to argue. To expose. I brought printouts of every violation Lena and I had received. Photos of our offending mailbox. Of the illegal rosemary bush. Of Travis photographing our windows. The clubhouse was quiet at first. A few neighbors heads down. Karen and Doug arrived late, laughing like they were headed to brunch. Travis stood behind them, arms folded. When it came time for community concerns, I stood up and cleared my throat. I'd like to address the assault on my wife. The room froze. Karen's smile didn't budge. That is not on the agenda, Mr. Hastings? I nodded. True. But according to Section 8.2 of the HOA Charter, any matter concerning resident safety can be brought up at open meetings. I've made copies for everyone. I passed out the packets. Some residents looked confused. Others looked intrigued. Inside each packet was a statement from Lena's ER doctor, a still image from the security footage, screenshots of unapproved structures in other yards including Karen's, highlighted financial reports showing unexplained consulting payments, a formal complaint signed by Paul, Jenna, and 3 other residents. Doug's face went red. Karen didn't flinch. This is absurd, she said. You're disrupting the meeting with personal vendettas. I'm exercising my right as a homeowner, I replied calmly, and asking the board to explain why these violations only seem to apply to certain residents. She tried to adjourn the meeting. But this time, people didn't just stay quiet. I'd like to hear what he has to say, one woman said. Me too, someone else added. And just like that, Karen's grip slipped, a fraction. After the meeting, I started an online group, Willow Ridge Voices. At first, it was just me, Paul, and Jenna. But within a week, over 20 residents had joined. People started sharing stories. One man said his wife was fined for putting up a wheelchair ramp, even though their son was disabled. A young couple posted about a violation they got for excessive lighting. They'd added a menorah next to their Christmas lights. A single mom said she was written up for having her trash cans visible while mowing the lawn. A pattern started to emerge. Karen's rules weren't about order. They were about power. Rebecca published a small article in the local paper. Just a column. No names. But the title said it all. When homeowners associations go too far. The group grew. People were angry. But they were also scared. Karen still had control over violations, fees, and, in some cases, property liens. That's when Sam suggested something new. Let's get legal, he said. We file a formal complaint with the state agency that oversees HOAs. They don't always act fast, but if we build a case from multiple residents, with documentation, they have to investigate. Paul nodded. I've got years of files. Rebecca added, I've been looking into Karen's finances. A lot of the consulting companies the HOA pays are either fake or linked to her family. Sam smiled. That's leverage. We spent the next week building the case. Every receipt, every violation, every public record we could find. Lena, Sling and all, coordinated residents to collect signatures. And Travis? He kept circling our house now 3 times a day. Once, I caught him peering through Lena's garden with a flashlight. I walked outside and stood silently. He looked at me, smiled, and said, "Just doing my job." I didn't say a word, but I made sure the camera above the garage was pointed directly at his face. That same day I filed a restraining order request, and got it. He was legally barred from coming within 50 feet of our property without a police escort. Karen responded by issuing a special assessment notice to all residents. $2,000 per household, for legal defense of community standards. It was obvious. They were trying to drain the HOA account before the state could look at the books. At the emergency meeting to vote on the assessment, Karen stood in front of the room and painted us, me and Lena, as the problem. "We have residents," she said, "who are spreading misinformation, attacking volunteers, and disrupting the peace of this community." I stood slowly. "My name is Jack Hastings. I moved here with my wife to build a quiet life. We followed every rule, until the rules were changed to punish us. I laid out every financial misstep, every citation inconsistency, and ended by holding up the still image of Lena on the ground, clutching her shoulder. This is what happens when power goes unchecked. This isn't about peace. It's about fear." The vote failed. Karen stormed out. Travis slammed a chair on the way out the door. That night, our cameras caught 2 figures sneaking into our backyard. One of them was Travis. The other, someone wearing police boots. We called 911. Officer Benson showed up. When we showed him the footage, he shrugged. "Hard to tell who that is," he said. "The guy walked directly in front of the camera," I replied. "Could have been edited." "Really? I suggest you drop this whole thing before it gets messy." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. Because that was the moment I knew, they were scared. Sam submitted our updated complaint to the state board, now 40 pages long. Rebecca started preparing a feature article. Paul contacted a city councilman he trusted. And Lena? She went back to work, in her sling, and treated Travis's mother in the ER without saying a single bitter word. "Why are you being kind to me?" Travis asked her. "Because that's my job," she said. "And because someone has to be better." We knew they weren't done. After the failed vote and the footage of Travis trespassing, things went quiet, too quiet. Karen stopped showing up at meetings. Doug wasn't answering emails. Travis didn't circle our house anymore. But silence? That's never peace. That's prep. Then late one night, Lena got a visitor at work. She was on a short shift at the ER, just doing admin while her shoulder healed. Travis showed up. Not as a patient. Not as a visitor. As a messenger. He walked into the break room where she was sipping tea and said flatly, "Karen wanted me to remind you that accidents happen. Especially when people dig too deep." Lena blinked. "You're threatening me?" she asked. Travis looked down at the floor, then back up. "Just passing along a warning." She stood up, all 5'4" of her. "Come. Steady. That sounds like a threat, Mr. Whitaker. And as a licensed medical professional and a mandatory reporter, I'm now obligated to inform both hospital security and the police." He froze. "You can clarify your statement before I make the call, or I suggest you leave." He left. Fast. 10 minutes later, she called me. Her voice was calm, but I heard it, that same edge I knew from missions. Someone had crossed the line. By the time she got home, the plan had already formed in my head. I just needed proof. Real proof. The next morning, Sam called. "We got an anonymous tip," he said. "A former HOA staffer." "What did they say?" "Karen and Doug are panicking. They're planning to plant evidence on your property, probably drugs, and have Officer Benson respond to a tip. Set you up, shut you down, discredit everything." I was silent for a moment. "When?" I asked. "Soon. Maybe tonight." I nodded. "Let's give them the show they want." Sam didn't argue. He just said, "I'll bring the gear." That evening, Paul and I installed 3 microcameras around my truck. One in the wheel well. One under the dash. One inside the glove box facing the seat. We also placed a 4th cam on the mailbox across the street. Wide angle. Perfect view of the driveway. Then I left the truck unlocked, on purpose. It was bait. And they were hungry. At 2:17 a.m. it happened. Travis approached first, glancing around. Then came Benson in plain clothes. He opened the driver's door, reached under the seat, placed a small plastic bag, white powder inside, tape. Then they left. I didn't move. I just watched the feed on my tablet, breath slow, mind calm. Training kicked in. This was just another op. At 5:21 a.m., a patrol car pulled up. Benson again. This time in uniform. I stepped outside in my robe and slippers. "Morning, officer," I said. "Got a tip," he said. "Possible narcotics on the premises. Mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" I gave him a tired look. "Seriously? It's standard procedure." "Sure," I said. "Knock yourself out." He opened the door, reached under the seat, and pulled out the same bag. He held it up like it was a trophy. Well. "What's that?" I asked, tone neutral. "Looks like a controlled substance." I raised an eyebrow. "Does it?" "Open it." He hesitated. Then he tore the seal. Inside. Powdered sugar. Literal baking sugar. Confectioner's grade. His brow furrowed. "What the hell?" "Maybe you should ask your partner from 217 this morning," I said. He blinked. I pulled out my phone. Pressed play. There he was. Clear as day. Placing the bag. "And just so you know," I added, "this footage has already been backed up to the cloud and sent to my lawyer, a district attorney, and 3 news outlets." Benson looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. From behind him, a second officer, younger, clearly uninformed, stepped forward. "What's going on?" "He just admitted to planting evidence," I said. "I didn't admit anything." "You were filmed. For angles. 2 timestamps. And I switched the bag hours ago." Benson stood frozen, mouth open, still holding the bag like it might vanish. "In the seals," I said, "we call this a layered trap. Redundant coverage, bait switch, capture. You just got caught." The younger officer radioed for his supervisor. Benson was placed on administrative leave within 2 hours. Sam and I filed a formal criminal complaint. The footage made its way up the chain. By afternoon, the police chief had seen it. By evening, it hit the news. Local HOA targets veteran in alleged conspiracy. Corrupt officer caught on camera. The HOA imploded. Karen tried to hold an emergency board meeting that night, in her living room. We were ready. Sam had already gotten a court order requiring that any HOA meeting be properly scheduled, held in public, open to all residents. When Karen tried to shut the door, a process server stepped forward. "You are in violation of a standing court order," he said, handing her the paper. Neighbors started gathering. Word had spread. Paul stood nearby, holding his phone up. "Smile for the people, Karen." Doug tried to sneak out the back. Jenna was waiting, filming. "Going somewhere, Doug?" He froze like a deer in headlights. That night, I got an email from the same anonymous source. Attached were 3 years' worth of bank transfers showing HOA funds redirected to a consulting firm run by Karen's sister, a security company owned by Doug's son, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Over $240,000 was missing. Gone. Sam looked through the data and said, "This isn't just HOA fraud. This is criminal conspiracy." The next morning we filed everything, all of it, with the district attorney. By the time the district attorney's office received our files, the case was airtight. Sam and I didn't just hand over screenshots. We handed over full printouts of financial records, HOA budgets, video evidence, sworn testimonies, and a color-coded map of Karen's entire racket. Within 48 hours, 3 things happened. 1. A search warrant was issued for the HOA office, Karen's home, and Doug's garage. 2. Benson's badge and gun were turned in. 3. A county-level fraud unit got involved. They raided the HOA office at 9:03 a.m. on a Wednesday. Karen wasn't there, she was at the salon. She returned to find officers loading file boxes into the back of a black SUV. Her face turned ghost white. She shouted at them, demanding answers. One of the officers calmly handed her the warrant. 2 streets over, Doug tried to sneak out his back door. Again, but this time Paul was already filming him live on our resident forum. "Nice morning for a raid, huh, Doug?" Doug said nothing. Just got in his Audi and drove straight into a police checkpoint. That same afternoon, Rebecca's full story hit the front page. Empire of Fines, How a Neighborhood Board Stole Over $240,000 from Its Own Residents. The headline went viral. News trucks rolled in. HOA Karens had finally met their match, and the internet loved it. The next day, Karen was arrested outside her home. In a robe. Screaming. Doug was arrested at a gas station. Benson, already suspended, turned himself in that evening. The fallout was massive. Residents flooded our online group, sharing stories they had kept quiet about for years. One woman had paid over $8,000 in fees that had never been logged. Another had been threatened with eviction over wind chimes. The new court-appointed HOA board immediately froze all accounts, opened a public audit, and slashed monthly fees by 40%. Turns out, the whole community beautification budget had gone to Karen's aesthetic consultant, who was of course her niece. At the sentencing hearing, Karen still wore pearls. "I was just doing what I thought was right," she said. "I preserved the integrity of Willow Ridge." The judge wasn't impressed. "You preserved your own wallet. For years. State prison. Doug got 3. Benson got 2, and lost his pension. And Travis? He cooperated. He stood in court and said, 'They gave me power I didn't earn. But Lena treated me like a person even after I hurt her. That changed me.' He got probation and started volunteering at a local veteran center. The trellis that started it all still stands, covered in jasmine just like Lena wanted. It became a symbol in Willow Ridge, of quiet resistance, of strength without violence, of what a community can be when people stop being afraid. Sometimes justice doesn't come with sirens and courtrooms. Sometimes it's a woman tending her garden without fear. A veteran sleeping through the night. A neighbor waving because they want to, not because they're afraid not to. We didn't move. We didn't surrender. We rebuilt. If this story hit home, hit the like button to support the channel. It helps more than you know. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this. Tell us in the comments, what's your Karen story? We're listening.